"If you can cure me, you get 1 million, said the rich man. Then the boy touched him and surprised everyone. Michael Anderson felt the world spin when the doctors confirmed his worst fear. After years confined to that wheelchair, hope seemed increasingly distant. Then he heard that child's voice echoing through the hospital hallway. A barefoot boy, no older than 8, approached slowly. "Mister, I can help you," the boy said with such conviction that Michael lifted his head. His small, calloused hands touched the businessman's shoulder, and in that moment, something changed. "What's your name, son?" Michael asked, trying to mask the emotions swelling in his chest. "Ethan, sir. I live over in Liberty City with my grandma, Dorothy," the boy replied, pointing out the window. Michael studied the boy more closely. The worn-out t-shirt, the faded shorts, the bare feet that seemed to know every stone on the path. He was just one of the many poor kids who lingered around the private hospital where Michael received weekly treatment in Miami. "And what makes you think you can help me?" Michael questioned, skepticism heavy in his voice. Ethan smiled, a grin that lit up his whole face. "Because I know how you feel. My dad was like this too after—" The boy paused, swallowing his words. "After what?" Michael pressed. "After he lost the will to live," Ethan finished, lowering his eyes. Those words struck Michael like lightning. 5 years ago, ever since that terrible day when he discovered the betrayal of Jennifer and Richard, his childhood best friend, his legs had simply stopped responding. The doctors found no physical explanation. All tests showed his nerves were perfectly intact, yet he couldn't walk. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Michael shook his head, trying to push away the painful memories. "Look, kid, I appreciate your concern, but if I can make you walk again, will you give me $1 million?" Ethan interrupted, his eyes shining with determination. The question caught Michael off guard. He laughed, a bitter, joyless sound. "$1 million? Do you even know how much that is, boy?" "Yes, sir. It's a lot of money. Enough to build a hospital up in Liberty City, so my grandma won't have to come all the way down when she's sick," Ethan answered simply. Michael studied the boy for a long moment. There was something different about him, a maturity that didn't match his age. "And if I say yes, what would you do?" "I'd take care of you every day. Do what my grandma did for my dad." Ethan stepped closer, his hand still on Michael's shoulder. "All right," Michael decided, half out of curiosity, half out of desperation. "If you can really make me walk again, I'll give you $1 million. But it has to be real, no tricks." Ethan's eyes sparkled even brighter. "A promise is a debt, right? That's what my grandma always says." And so began the most unlikely of friendships. Every day, at exactly 7 in the morning, Ethan showed up at Michael's mansion in Coral Gables. The guards knew him by now and let him in without question. The boy always brought a smile and stories from Liberty City. Jennifer, Michael's ex-wife, appeared during the 2nd week. She still had a key to the house and walked in unannounced, finding Ethan massaging Michael's feet in the living room. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, completely ignoring the boy's presence. "We have nothing to discuss, Jennifer." "You made your choice 5 years ago," Michael replied coldly. "Please, just listen. It wasn't how you think. Richard, he—" She stopped when she saw the ice in Michael's gaze. "Ethan, could you give us a moment?" Michael asked the boy. "Of course, Mr. Michael. I'll go to the kitchen to get a glass of water." Ethan discreetly left. Jennifer approached, her eyes brimming with tears. "Michael, I never meant to hurt you. Richard had photos. He said he'd show everyone if I didn't." "Enough!" Michael interrupted her. "You had 5 years to tell me this. 5 years, Jennifer." "I was scared. You don't understand. He threatened my family, said he had dangerous connections." Jennifer sobbed now. Michael closed his eyes, feeling the old pain tighten his chest. That's when he felt Ethan's small hands on his shoulder again. The boy had returned silently. "Mom, your heart's in a lot of pain, isn't it?" Ethan said softly to Jennifer. Jennifer looked at the boy in surprise. "Who are you?" "I'm Ethan. I'm helping Mr. Michael walk again," the boy replied simply. "Walk again?" Jennifer glanced from Ethan to Michael, confused. Yeah. My grandma says when we hold on to too much hurt, our bodies get sick. That's what happened to my dad, Ethan explained. Michael felt a lump in his throat. The boy had a wisdom beyond his years. Ethan, I think it's best you go home today. We'll continue tomorrow. Okay, Mr. Michael. But remember what we talked about forgiving, all right? Ethan said before leaving. After the boy left, Jennifer and Michael sat in silence for long minutes. Who is that boy? Jennifer finally asked. Someone who came into my life when I needed it most, Michael answered, his voice softer now. Michael, I still love you, Jennifer confessed. No, Jennifer. You loved the idea of me, what I represented. If you truly loved me, you would have trusted me, Michael said calmly. Jennifer left in tears, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. That night, for the first time in years, he felt a tingling in his legs. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The next day, Ethan arrived earlier than usual, accompanied by an elderly woman. It was Grandma Dorothy, his grandmother. Good morning, Mr. Michael. I brought my grandma today. She wanted to meet you, Ethan announced cheerfully. Grandma Dorothy was a black woman with white hair, her face lined with age, but her smile warm. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Michael. Ethan talks about you a lot. The pleasure's mine, Grandma Dorothy. Your grandson is a special boy, Michael replied, genuinely moved. He takes after his grandfather, Grandma Dorothy said affectionately, ruffling Ethan's hair. My late husband also had that gift of seeing others' pain. While Ethan helped Michael with his exercises, Grandma Dorothy shared her story. She had worked as a housemaid her whole life, raising 5 children alone after her husband passed. Ethan's father, her youngest son, had become paraplegic after discovering his fiancée was cheating on him with his own brother. It was a hard time, Grandma Dorothy sighed. My boy lost his will to live, ill. The doctors said there was nothing wrong with his legs, but he couldn't walk. Michael listened intently, seeing parallels with his own story. How did he recover? He asked, almost without thinking. He didn't, Grandma Dorothy said sadly. He passed before that. But before he left, he made me promise to teach Ethan everything my husband had taught me about healing people's souls. Michael felt a pang in his heart. He looked at Ethan, who was still massaging his feet with dedication. And what happened to his fiancée and brother? Michael wanted to know. Life took its toll, Mr. Michael. She left his brother soon after, said it had been a mistake. His brother was never the same, lives alone to this day, full of guilt. And she... Well, she tries every year on All Souls' Day to ask for forgiveness at my son's grave. Grandma Dorothy wiped away a stubborn tear. The heavy silence was broken by the sound of Michael's cell phone. It was his brother, Robert. Michael, we need to talk about the company. Robert's voice sounded tense. Go ahead, Michael answered on speakerphone. Not over the phone. It's about the shares. Someone's buying everything on the market. They already have nearly 30% of the company, Robert explained. Michael felt his blood run cold. Someone was trying to take control of his company. I'll call David. He'll investigate. Do you have any suspicions? Not yet, but it's someone with a lot of money and insider information, Robert hung up. Ethan noticed Michael's tension. Everything all right, Mr. Michael? Adult problems, Ethan. Nothing you need to worry about, Michael tried to smile. But Ethan wasn't easily fooled. My grandma says a shared problem is a halved problem. Grandma Dorothy nodded. The boy's right. Sometimes talking helps clear your thoughts. Michael sighed. Someone's trying to take my company, and here I am, stuck in this chair, unable to do anything. You're not stuck, Ethan said firmly. You're holding yourself back. It's different. Those simple words struck Michael deeply. The boy was right. He had imprisoned himself in his own pain, his own bitterness. In the following weeks, Michael began noticing small changes. The tingling in his legs became more frequent. One day he managed to wiggle his right big toe. Ethan celebrated as if it were the greatest victory in the world. See? I told you you'd do it. The boy jumped with joy, but not everything was perfect. Richard, Michael's former best friend, showed up on a rainy Sunday. Ethan was in the kitchen making tea when the doorbell rang. Michael, it's me, Richard. Please let me in. The voice on the intercom sounded desperate. Michael hesitated but finally allowed him in. Richard entered, soaked, his face haggard, nothing like the confident man Michael had once known. "You have the nerve to show up here?" Michael said coldly. "Michael, I came to warn you. Jennifer wasn't the only one Richard stopped, unable to continue. "What are you saying?" Michael felt his stomach twist. "I had a scheme, Michael. I took information from companies where my friends worked and sold it. Jennifer found out, and I forced her to stay quiet," Richard confessed, his words tumbling out. Michael felt as if the world had collapsed again. "You used information from my company?" "Yes. For years. And now they're collecting. They want the whole company, Michael. These are dangerous people." Richard was panicking. "Are they the ones buying the shares?" Michael connected the dots. "Yes. They want to force me to get more information, but I don't have access anymore." "Michael, they threatened my family," Richard pleaded. Ethan appeared at the door with a tray of tea. He stopped when he sensed the tension in the air. "Mr. Michael, I brought your tea," the boy said softly. Richard looked at Ethan in surprise. "Who's this boy?" "Someone more honest than you'll ever be," Michael replied bitterly. Ethan set the tray down and, to everyone's surprise, offered a cup to Richard. "You must be cold too." Richard accepted the tea with trembling hands. "Thank you, boy." "Michael, I know I don't deserve it, but I need your help." "They'll kill me," Richard begged. Michael closed his eyes, wrestling with conflicting emotions. Anger, resentment, but also concern. After all, they had been friends for over 30 years. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. "Mr. Michael," Ethan gently touched his arm. "Remember what my grandma always says? We don't forgive for others. We forgive to free ourselves." Michael looked at the boy, then at Richard. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Over the next few hours, Richard revealed the whole scheme. It had started small, selling minor information to pay off gambling debts. But the criminal group demanded more and more. When Richard tried to leave, they blackmailed him. That's when they found out about Jennifer and Michael. "They forced me to create a situation. They took fake photos, doctored images, threatened to expose them if Jennifer didn't cooperate." Richard was crying now. Michael felt sick. His entire life had been destroyed because of his best friend's gambling debts. "And Jennifer knew about all this?" Michael asked. "No, she thought I was in love with her. I made her believe it to protect both of you. If she knew the truth, she might have done something reckless," Richard explained. Ethan, who had stayed quiet until then, spoke up. "You're a prisoner too, aren't you?" "Just like Mr. Michael was." Richard looked at the boy, surprised by the depth of his observation. "What do you mean, Ethan?" Michael asked. "Mr. Michael was trapped in his chair because of bitterness. Mr. Richard was trapped by fear. Everyone here is trapped by something," Ethan explained with childlike simplicity. Michael felt the boy's words echo in his mind. It was true. Everyone there was a prisoner of their own choices and consequences. "Richard, I'll help you. But on conditions," Michael finally said. Richard lifted his head, hope shining in his eyes. "Anything, Michael. First, you'll give all the names to the authorities. Second, you'll return every cent you earned from this, even if you have to sell everything. Third, you'll get help for your addiction," Michael listed firmly. "And fourth," Ethan added, making both men look at him, "you'll apologize to Ms. Jennifer too. She suffered a lot." Richard agreed to everything. In the following weeks, Michael mobilized his lawyers and contacts. The situation was complex, but not impossible. The hardest part was convincing Richard to turn himself in, but with the promise of protection and a plea deal, he finally agreed. Jennifer learned the whole truth from Michael. She fainted when she realized the extent of what had happened. All those years of guilt, of feeling like a traitor when in reality she had been the victim of a criminal scheme. "Forgive me, Michael. Forgive me for not trusting you," Jennifer sobbed in his arms. Michael, still in his wheelchair, returned the embrace. "I need to ask for forgiveness too, Jennifer, for not giving you a chance to explain, for shutting myself in my own pain." Ethan watched the scene with a smile. His grandma was right. Forgiveness really did set you free. Michael's recovery accelerated after that. It was as if every forgiveness given and received unlocked something in his body. The doctors were stunned when, during a routine checkup, Michael managed to stand for a few seconds. "It's medically inexplicable," Dr. Thompson, the neurologist, admitted. "All previous tests showed no physical barrier, yet you simply couldn't. And now I want to—" Michael finished, looking at Ethan, who smiled beside him. The fight against the criminal group wasn't easy. There were threats, attempts at intimidation. Michael had to increase security, and even Ethan and Grandma Dorothy received protection. But with the evidence Richard provided and the expertise of Michael's lawyers, the authorities dismantled the gang. During that turbulent time, the friendship between Michael and Ethan grew even deeper. The boy spent his afternoons at the mansion, no longer just for exercises, but to do homework, play in the garden, or simply talk. One day Michael asked, "Ethan, why are you so sure I'll walk again?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering, "Because you want to live again. My father didn't want to anymore, so he couldn't. But you do. I see it in your eyes." "And the $1 million? Do you still want it?" Michael teased gently. "Of course, my grandma needs the hospital, but now I also want you to walk because you're my friend," Ethan replied sincerely. Robert, Michael's brother, was initially suspicious of Ethan and his intentions. He thought the boy and his grandmother were trying to take advantage of Michael's vulnerability. "Michael, you need to be careful. This boy comes out of nowhere, promising miracles," Robert argued. "Robert, this boy gave me back something I lost a long time ago, hope," Michael defended. The turning point came when Robert had Ethan and Grandma Dorothy investigated. What he found left him ashamed. Grandma Dorothy was known in the community for her generosity, caring for abandoned children and elderly people with no family. Ethan, despite his young age, helped his grandmother and was loved by everyone. There wasn't a single negative record about them. "I'm sorry, Michael, I was wrong," Robert admitted. "You were protecting your brother." "I understand," Michael replied. The relationship between Michael and Jennifer also evolved. They didn't become a couple again. Too much had happened, but they developed a sincere friendship. Jennifer began working on a social project, using her administrative experience to help. "You know, Michael, that boy saved us both," Jennifer remarked one day, watching Ethan play in the garden. "How so?" Michael asked. "He saved you from the prison of your body." "And he saved me from the prison of my guilt," Jennifer explained. It was true. Ethan, with his childlike wisdom and pure heart, had touched the lives of everyone around him. The big day came 6 months after their first meeting. Michael was in the physical therapy room, Ethan by his side as always. Grandma Dorothy, Jennifer, Robert, and even Richard, who was serving a suspended sentence, were present. "Come on, Mr. Michael, I know you can do it," Ethan encouraged. Michael took a deep breath. He leaned on the arms of the chair and slowly stood up. His legs trembled but held his weight. Then, with Ethan holding his hand, he took a step. Then another, and another. The room erupted in tears and applause. Michael had walked on his own for the first time in 5 years. "I told you you could do it." Ethan jumped for joy. Michael hugged the boy, tears streaming freely. "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for teaching me to forgive and to live again." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. In the following months, Michael fully regained his mobility. The doctors still had no scientific explanation, but Michael knew. He had been healed by an 8-year-old boy who saw beyond the physical. True to his word, Michael not only gave Ethan the promised $1 million, but did much more. He created the Dorothy Foundation in honor of the boy's grandmother, building not just a hospital in Liberty City, but also a community center, a vocational school, and a daycare. Ethan continued visiting Michael regularly. The boy now had access to the best education, but kept his feet on the ground, literally still preferring to walk barefoot when possible. "Mr. Michael, can I ask you something?" Ethan said one day, now 9 years old. "Of course, Ethan. What is it?" Michael replied. "Why do grown-ups make things so complicated?" the boy asked with genuine curiosity. Michael laughed. I think we forgot how to be simple. You taught me to remember. Richard, after serving his sentence, dedicated himself to helping other gambling addicts. With Michael's support, he created a support group that met weekly. Jennifer found her purpose in social work. She met a widowed volunteer and, in time, allowed herself to love again. Michael was the best man at the wedding, genuinely happy for his friend. Robert, moved by the whole story, grew closer to his brother. The two began working together not just in business, but on social projects. Grandma Dorothy lived to see her grandson graduate from medical school years later. Ethan specialized in integrative medicine, combining scientific knowledge with the wisdom he'd learned from his grandmother about the connection between body and soul. On a sunny afternoon, 15 years after that first meeting, Michael and Ethan walked along the beach. Michael, now with graying hair, moved with the agility of someone much younger. Ethan, a young doctor, retained the same simplicity and wisdom from his childhood. You know, Ethan, you didn't just heal me physically, Michael said, watching the waves. I didn't heal you, Mr. Michael. You healed yourself. I just showed you the way, Ethan replied. A path that started with a touch and a promise of $1 million, Michael recalled with a smile. And ended with something far more valuable, Ethan finished. What? Michael asked. A family, Ethan answered, pointing to the approaching group. Jennifer with her husband, Robert with his family, Richard with his support group, Grandma Dorothy in her wheelchair, pushed by one of the many children she'd helped raise. Michael felt his heart warm. Ethan was right. He had gained much more than the ability to walk. He had gained a second chance at life, an extended family, a renewed purpose. That afternoon, as the sun set over Biscayne Bay, Michael reflected on his journey. A barefoot boy had entered his life when he was at his lowest, confined to a wheelchair more by bitterness than illness. Ethan had touched not just his shoulder that first day, but his soul. He taught him that forgiveness liberates, that love heals, that simplicity holds more power than all the wealth in the world. The hospital in Liberty City served thousands. The Dorothy Foundation had expanded to other communities. Ethan, now Dr. Ethan, provided free care on Saturdays, keeping alive his grandmother's tradition of helping those in need. Michael continued running his businesses, but with a new perspective. He implemented social responsibility policies, inclusion programs, and made a point of hiring young people from underserved communities. One special morning, Michael was invited to speak at a medical school graduation. Ethan was among the graduates receiving special honors. At the podium, Michael began his speech. 15 years ago, an 8-year-old boy made me an unusual offer. If he could make me walk again, I'd give him $1 million. The audience listened intently. That boy taught me there are prisons worse than a wheelchair, the prisons we build with our bitterness, our pride, our inability to forgive. He freed me not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Michael paused, finding Ethan's eyes in the crowd. Dr. Ethan Dorothy Williams represents the best of medicine, the ability to see beyond symptoms, to touch not just the body, but the soul. He proved to me that a sincere touch, filled with compassion and wisdom, is worth more than millions. The applause was immediate. Ethan, moved, hugged his grandmother, who wept with pride. After the ceremony, as they walked across the campus, Ethan asked, "Mr. Michael, if you could go back in time, would you change anything?" Michael thought carefully. "You know, Ethan, for a long time I wished I could go back and spare myself all that pain. But if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have learned about forgiveness, about life's true riches, so no, I wouldn't change a thing." "My grandma always says, God writes straight with crooked lines," Ethan remarked. "Your grandmother is a wise woman," Michael agreed. "Do you know what she told me the other day?" Ethan continued. "That you healed me too." "How so?" Michael was surprised. "I grew up without a father, Mr. Michael. You showed me what it's like to have someone who believes in you, who invests in you not out of obligation but out of love. You gave me more than an education. You gave me an example," Ethan explained, moved. The two men embraced, the millionaire businessman and the young doctor who had once been just a barefoot boy with a special gift. Life moved on. Michael eventually found love again, with a retired teacher he met through one of the Foundation's projects. Ethan married a fellow doctor who shared his ideals. Grandma Dorothy lived to see great-grandchildren, always active in the community. The Liberty City Hospital became a model for integrative medicine. Doctors from across the country came to learn about the approach that united science and humanity. Ethan always began his lectures with the same words. Healing begins when we touch not just the body, but the story behind the illness. Richard turned his experience into strength to help others. His support group grew, saving families from the destruction of addiction. He never forgot the forgiveness he had received and made sure to pass it on. Jennifer became a leader in social project management. Her story of resilience inspired other women who had faced similar hardships. She always credited her recovery to the boy who had seen her pain beyond appearances. At the Foundation's annual meeting, everyone gathered to celebrate their achievements and plan for the future. Michael, now the board chairman, looked around the room filled with people whose lives had been transformed. "It all started with a touch," he murmured to himself. "And it continues with every life we touch," Ethan added, overhearing the remark. It was true. What had begun as an unlikely encounter between a bitter millionaire and a poor boy had grown into a movement of social and personal change. Michael sometimes woke in the early hours and moved his legs, still amazed by the miracle, not the physical one, but the miracle of inner transformation Ethan had sparked. The boy who had promised to heal him in exchange for $1 million had given far more. He had restored Michael's ability to love, to trust, to forgive. He had brought broken people together and helped them rebuild. On sleepless nights, Michael wrote, he began a book telling his story, not out of vanity, but in the hope that others might find it helpful. The title was simple: The Touch Worth Millions. When Ethan read the first chapters, he suggested, "Mr. Michael, I think you should also include the others. It wasn't just your story. It was the story of all of us." Michael agreed. The book became a chorus of voices, with testimonies from Jennifer, Richard, Robert, Grandma Dorothy, and so many others touched by that chain of transformation. The launch was held at the Liberty City Hospital. Michael insisted it take place there, where everything had truly begun. The proceeds would fund scholarships for young people in the community. During the event, a young girl approached Michael. She was about the same age Ethan had been when they first met. "Mister, my mum's sick. She hasn't gotten out of bed since my dad left. Dr. Ethan said you could help," the girl said timidly. Michael looked at Ethan, who smiled. The cycle continued. "What's your name?" Michael asked gently. "Olivia, sir." "Well, Olivia, let's visit your mother. And you know, I once met someone who taught me that sometimes we don't get sick in the body, but in the heart," Michael replied. Accompanied by Ethan, Michael visited Olivia's mother. The story repeated itself: abandonment, sorrow, emotional paralysis manifesting physically. But now there was a support network, trained professionals, an entire community mobilized. 6 months later, Olivia's mother took her first steps, supported by her daughter and a whole team. Michael watched, moved, seeing his own miracle multiplied. "You created something beautiful," Ethan remarked. "We created it," Michael corrected. "And it all started because an 8-year-old boy had the courage to believe he could make a difference." Time passed. Michael aged gracefully, always active, always walking. Ethan became the hospital director, expanding the work's reach even further. Grandma Dorothy passed away at 95, surrounded by love and certain she had fulfilled her mission. At Grandma Dorothy's funeral, hundreds of people attended. Michael gave an emotional speech. "Grandma Dorothy taught me, through her grandson, that true wealth isn't in the bank but in the good we do. She raised a boy who saved not just my legs but my soul. May her memory continue to inspire generations." Ethan, despite the pain of loss, remained serene. "She left happy, Mr. Michael. She saw her dream come true, saw the hospital running, saw lives being transformed. The foundation created the Dorothy Award, given annually to people who showed extraordinary compassion and dedication to others. The first recipient was Richard, for his work with addicts. At 75, Michael still climbed Liberty City every week. The legs that once wouldn't respond now carried him through alleys and streets, visiting families, supporting projects. During one visit, he met a man in a wheelchair, bitter after an accident. Michael sat beside him and began telling his story. "You're saying a boy got you walking again just with massage?" the man asked skeptically. "It wasn't the massage. It was what came with it. Hope, forgiveness, love. The body is sometimes wiser than we are. It protects us when the pain is too much, but it also heals when we find a reason to live," Michael explained. "And if I don't find that reason?" the man asked. "Then we look together. That's what Ethan did for me. He never gave up, even when I had." Ethan, now the hospital director but still as humble as ever, created a training program for community youth in integrative medicine. The first class had 30 students, all with stories of overcoming. "You'll learn that medicine is more than diagnosis and medication. It's about seeing the whole person," Ethan told the students. Michael fully funded the program, seeing those young people, many barefoot like Ethan once was, dedicating themselves to caring for others, filled his heart with purpose. At a celebratory lunch, Jennifer remarked, "Michael, remember when we thought happiness was that life we had? Parties, trips, luxury." "I remember. How empty we were," Michael replied. "It hurts to admit, but I'm grateful for what happened. Without that fall, we'd never have rebuilt ourselves better," Jennifer reflected. Richard, present at the lunch, added, "I destroyed a lot, but your forgiveness gave me a chance to build something new. Today, I helped my 100th addict break free. It's my daily redemption." Robert watched his brother with admiration. "Michael, you turned a personal tragedy into a blessing for thousands. That's true greatness." The greatness came from a boy who saw beyond. Michael always insisted on giving credit to Ethan. The hospital expanded. Now there were 3 units in different neighborhoods of Miami. Each one maintained the philosophy of comprehensive care. Body, mind, and spirit treated as one. International researchers came to study the Ethan method, as it became known. The recovery rate for patients with psychosomatic paralysis was impressive. At a medical conference, Ethan presented success cases. In the audience, renowned doctors questioned, "Dr. Williams, how do you scientifically explain these results? Science is still catching up to what folk wisdom has always known. We are integrated beings. When we heal emotional trauma, the body often responds," Ethan explained. Michael, present at the conference, felt proud of the son he had chosen. Ethan always introduced him as his father, and the feeling was mutual. At 80 years old, Michael still took daily walks. One particular morning, he climbed to the highest point of the neighborhood where the main hospital stood. There, a statue of Grandma Dorothy welcomed visitors. Ethan found him there, deep in thought. "What are you thinking about, Mr. Michael?" "About how one encounter can change so many lives. If you hadn't shown up that day," Michael mused. "But I did. My grandmother used to say, there are no coincidences, only encounters life prepares," Ethan replied. Wise words. As always, Michael smiled. The two stood in silence, watching the city below. The sun rose, painting everything gold. A new day began, full of possibilities for healing and transformation. At the hospital, the first patients arrived. Many came from far away, drawn by stories of miraculous recoveries. But the miracle, Michael and Ethan knew, lay in human connection, in compassionate touch, in the willingness to see beyond the surface. A young doctor approached. "Dr. Ethan, we have a special case. A businessman from Chicago, paralyzed for 2 years after discovering embezzlement in his company." Ethan smiled. The story repeated itself in new settings, with new characters. "Let's see him, and call Dr. Michael too. He has experience with this type of paralysis." Michael laughed. Dr. Michael, the honorary title the university had granted him for his contributions to integrative medicine. Who would have thought the embittered businessman would become a reference in emotional healing? Entering the room, Michael saw a man who could have been himself 20 years earlier. The same defeated look, the same posture of someone who had given up. "Good morning, I'm Michael and this is Dr. Ethan. We're here to talk about your condition," Michael began. "I've seen every specialist. No one finds anything wrong," the man replied bitterly. "Sometimes what's wrong doesn't show up in tests," Ethan said gently. Michael sat beside the bed. "Would you like to tell me what happened?" Hesitant at first, the man began to speak. Betrayal by his partner, losing a lifetime of savings, shame before his family. A familiar story, with new details. "You know," Michael started, "I was once exactly where you are. Same chair, same paralysis, same hopelessness." The man looked surprised. "And how did you get out of it?" Michael pointed to Ethan. "An 8-year-old boy taught me I wasn't paralyzed. I was trapped. They're different things." "I don't understand," the man admitted. "You will, with time, patience, and the willingness to forgive, especially yourself," Michael explained. Ethan began the work. Massages, conversations, exercises that were more for the soul than the body. Michael stayed close, sharing his experience. Weeks later, the man took his first steps. He cried like a child, hugging Michael and Ethan. "Thank you. You gave me back my life," he said through tears. "We only showed the way. You chose to walk," Ethan replied. The man became another link in the chain. He returned to Chicago and created a support center for struggling entrepreneurs based on the Miami model. The network grew. What had begun with a touch had become a movement. Hospitals in various cities adopted aspects of the method. Universities created courses on integrative medicine. Michael, in his later years, devoted himself to writing, not just one book, but several. Stories of transformation, manuals on how to create support centers, reflections on forgiveness and healing. Ethan Beyond Medicine became a professor. His classes were in high demand, with young doctors eager to learn about the power of compassion in healing. One special afternoon, 3 generations gathered in the garden of Michael's old mansion, now transformed into a community center. Michael, Ethan with his family, and Olivia, the girl whose mother had been healed, now a psychology graduate. "Dr. Michael," Olivia began, "I came to thank you. You saved my mother, and that changed our whole lives." "I only passed on what I received," Michael replied, looking at Ethan. The wheel of life turned. Olivia now worked at the hospital, helping patients with emotional paralysis. The method evolved, but the essence remained: human connection, compassion, the healing touch. Jennifer, now widowed from her second husband, remained active in the foundation. At a board meeting, she proposed, "I think we should take the method international. So many people are suffering in the world." The proposal was accepted. Partnerships began with hospitals in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Doctors came to train in Miami, taking back not just techniques, but a philosophy of care. Michael watched it all with satisfaction. At 85, still sharp and active, he marveled at how far something so simple had reached. In moments of reflection, he often returned to that first day, the barefoot boy, the promise of $1 million, the touch that changed everything. Ethan, noticing his nostalgia, remarked, "You think about that day a lot, don't you?" "How could I not? It was the day I was reborn," Michael answered. "You've repaid that million a million times over," Ethan joked, "and I'd do it again without hesitation." "Every penny invested in you, in the foundation, in every transformed life was worth it," Michael affirmed. The legacy was secure. Young doctors trained in the method, support centers across the country, thousands of lives changed. But more than physical structures, the legacy was one of hope. At an international conference on integrative medicine, Michael was honored. On stage, before thousands of professionals, he spoke, "My story proves there are no lost causes, only people who haven't yet found the right touch, the right word, the right moment of healing. Our mission as healers, whether doctors, therapists, or simply compassionate humans, is to never give up." The ovation was long and emotional. Ethan, by his side, held his hand just as he had on the day Michael took his first steps again. After the conference, the chosen father and son walked along the beach. The sun set, painting the sky in impossible colors. "Ethan, I've been thinking," Michael began. Yes, Ethan encouraged. I want you to promise to keep going. When I'm gone, I want the flame to stay alive, Michael asked. You know I will, but we still have a long road ahead, Ethan replied. Yes, but it's good to know the future is in good hands, Michael concluded. They walked back slowly, two men bound by something greater than blood, shared purpose, love built through perseverance, mutual respect. Night fell over Miami. In the communities, the hospitals, the support centers, the work continued. People touching people, healing pains no medicine could reach, rebuilding lives. Michael went up to his room and, before sleeping, looked out the window. High on Liberty City, the hospital lights shone like a beacon. He smiled, grateful. A barefoot boy had kept his promise. He had made a broken man walk again, but more than that, he had taught him to fly, and now, together, they helped others find their wings. The promised million had multiplied into millions of moments of transformation, healing touches and renewed lives. It was the best investment Michael had ever made. With this comforting thought, Michael Anderson, the man who once thought he had lost everything, drifted off to sleep in peace, knowing he had gained what truly mattered: purpose, love, and the certainty that his time on Earth had made a difference. Ethan, at home, was putting his son to bed. The 5-year-old boy asked, "Dad, is it true you healed Grandpa Michael?" Ethan smiled. "I helped, son. But you know the secret? Everyone has the power to heal themselves. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them." "When I grow up, I want to help people too," the boy declared. "You will, my son, you will," Ethan said, watching the cycle continue. The full moon shone over Miami. In Liberty City, on the beaches, in hospitals and homes, stories of transformation kept being written. The touch that had begun between a desperate millionaire and a hopeful boy echoed on, reaching hearts and changing destinies. It was the miracle of love in action. Compassion turned into healing, hope that never died. And it all started with a simple promise: if you can heal me, you'll get $1 million. Ethan had healed Michael. Michael had helped heal thousands. And the chain continued, link by link, touch by touch, proving that the greatest investment we can make is in the transformative power of human love. The end. And you, dear listener, what did you think? Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave your like, subscribe, and share in the comments where you're watching from. Your opinion means so much to us.